What's up, everyone? Welcome into the All 22 show. You have Chris and Ray, and we are back again. Ray, I missed you, dude. I mean, I only put out one episode while you were gone, but I think everybody missed you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm back from parts unknown. Some of you actually do know, but others don't. I'll just say parts unknown. But yeah, it's good to be back. Season's kind of right around the corner. Training camp's in 2 weeks, so we're really starting to build some momentum for the season. Excitement's building. Leagues are starting. Leagues are forming. Some new features are being finalized. More to come there. So it's a great time to be back, jump back into it, and get to talking more NFL and all 22.
Yeah, dude, you were severely missed. I'm happy to have you back. We do have such exciting things to announce, and we just can't do it yet. It's frustrating, but that's where we are. That's where we are. But everybody, again, thank you for tuning in. We have a really fun, exciting topic today. It's one of our favorite ones because it makes us so different than everybody else. One of the great things about All 22 is that every year the value of your players change based on what position they play, right? And if you aren't familiar with All 22, we are the fantasy football game that uses full 53-man rosters, including offensive linemen. You get to use personnel packages, have access to PFF grading. One of the things that we do is we use weights, right? Positional weights, so that a quarterback that scores a 99 in PFF grading won't have the same impact on your team as the running back that scores 99, right? So we wanted to differentiate that. And the way that we did that is we created positional weights, okay? So how do we do that? How do we create a positional weight without it being severely biased, right? In the NFL, there's really not a great way to do that until we made this method, which we think is great, which is the NFL tells us how valuable a position is based on how they pay that position. So if you look at how, franchise tags kind of go to the different positions, that's essentially the NFL telling you what they think that position's worth. So what we did is a little bit different. Is we did that for every position, but based on the positions that you would play in fantasy football for all 22: quarterback, receiver, edge rusher, defensive interior. It's a little different, right? Because in the NFL, franchise tag is linebacker, and linebacker may include edge rusher, or it may include down lineman, depending on how many times they lift their hand off the dirt, right? So it's a little bit kind of sketchy the way the NFL does it. Ours is much more clear, but that's how we determine our positional weights. And today we're going to go through those positional weight updates. And again, the NFL paid new players this year. Those weights change. So the value of your players change. One of the kind of greatest parts of our game is not only are you picking the best players, and not only are you trying to figure out how to build the best team, you have to think about how the NFL is going to change year over year and how that's going to impact the weight of your players. For example, if you go really heavy at defensive interior, but then they stop paying defensive interior players, you're investing in a position that's weakening. And we're going to kind of go through how those changes have happened over the past few months as the NFL offseason has been underway.
Yeah, it's the greatest, most unique part of our game, and that's the great thing about it is as the NFL evolves, our game evolves, so it will never be out of date. If running backs really, really matter again moving forward, and their value increases to teams year over year or over the years, that will be reflected in all 22 fantasy football as it's happening. So for those of you who are running backs don't matter, well, the data kind of supports you in recent years. It's kind of shifting a little bit lately here, but in general, wherever the NFL falls on this stuff, all 22 is right there with it, evolving with the game as the game evolves. So it's always the latest and greatest year over year as we move forward here.
Running back actually took a step up this year. They surpassed another position, climbing the board. So we're going to get into that. Ray, did you have a way that you wanted to go about kind of talking about this? Do you want to go like heaviest weighted position to least, or the opposite? What do you think?
Let's start with heaviest weighted and just talk about our takeaways there. I think that's a good way to do it. Everybody wants to start with the flashy, shiny objects there that matter the most. So let's just jump right into it.
All right. So then we're going to start with quarterback, which, surprise, surprise, is the most valuable position in all 22 because it is the most valuable position in the NFL. But we actually saw for the first time in all 22 history, which is now like 6 or 7 years that we've been calculating this, the position weight actually declined from last season. So that doesn't mean quarterbacks are getting paid less. It just means that they are getting paid less in relation to the other positions as the other positions raise. If quarterbacks aren't raising an equal amount, it's going to decrease the weight for quarterbacks, right? So Quarterback this year is going to go down to 10.27%. If you are live in the system, you've probably already seen that. Last year was at 10.87%. So almost, 0.6%. That's in a game could be a huge difference in the results. Let's talk about it, Ray. So what are the reasons that weight actually went down? Is it just that people weren't getting paid?
Yeah, it's just that there weren't a lot of extensions this past year. I mean, we had Dak Prescott, who became the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. But as we go through this exercise, you're going to see other positions had multiple players sort of set a new high for the market at those positions. So quarterbacks still are getting paid the most by far. I mean, 10.27% is still clearly the highest valued position in the league, but it's just a matter of volume wise, it was a down year for the number of quarterbacks getting paid in that top 5 range. So Brock Purdy, for example, had an extension, but he's not a top 5 highest paid quarterback year over year. So he doesn't raise the ceiling of the position of the quarterback payment position. So therefore, he doesn't actually increase that positional value in all 22 in relation to those other positions. Only Dak was the extension that sort of raised the bar a bit for quarterbacks, where other positions had 3 or 4 players have record-breaking extensions here that just simply raised their weights in relation to quarterbacks. So quarterbacks are still getting paid. That's not going anywhere. Some of the other biggest risers in this exercise as we go through, you're going to see are related to the passing game. So the emphasis that the NFL has on the passing game, not going to change anytime soon. And we have some other young up-and-coming quarterbacks here that are due for extensions very soon here. That'll go back, in my estimation, to the norm of the year-over-year increase for quarterback as each and every year goes along, which was the most of any position since we started measuring in all 22.
Right, and that's exactly right. Next year, like you said, we might see this kind of start to shift again because CJ Stroud, depending on the year that Bryce Young has, I don't think Anthony Richardson's going to be changing the market, but I think those two guys, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, could have an impact on this, depending on the years that they have. CJ Stroud could essentially be taking the $60 million Dak Prescott deal and surpassing it by a decent margin because it's been a couple of years now since that contract was signed. So we could see next year the quarterback position go back up. But it really is just 2 quarterbacks, and typically it takes a few, right? It takes a few because when we're talking about other positions, receiver might have 4 receivers that are impacting that weight in a given year because there are so many good receivers that come into the league every year. So it does make a difference, and it is something to track. But that is quarterback. They are leading the group. Second on this list is a bit different. Again, it is the same as last year, but again, historically and in people's minds, I think they always think that this position is a little further down the list, but it's wide receiver. Wide receiver is now the second highest paid position at the top with 6.38% weight this year. So again, going up from 6.04, it's almost a 0.34% increase. That's pretty massive. So, Ray, do you have the data in front of you to tell us what impacted that so significantly?
Yeah, wide receiver, big contract signed by Justin Jefferson at $35 million per year and AJ Brown at $32 million per year. So, that's going to increase the market. It's actually up 1.14% since 2022. And like you said, 0.34% year over year last year. It's a huge increase. And so to what I touched on before, the NFL is still a passing league. Yes, running backs are kind of, making a bit of a climb here this past year with the Saquon contract, and everyone's kind of got eyes on that again, but it is still a passing league. Make no mistake about it. Quarterback is obviously the crown jewel. Then it's who's catching passes from the quarterback, these receivers who can change the geometry of the opposing defense and really dictate how the game is going to be played because of the threat that they pose on the outside. Justin Jefferson on signed mega deals at wide receiver really lifted the tide for the positional value for wide receiver. So yes, wide receiver is the second highest positional weight in all 22 because the top tier of that position gets paid more than any other top tier position in the NFL outside of quarterback.
Did you get the Jamar Chase and DK Metcalf deals in there? Because I think Jamar Chase signed a deal this year over 40 million, the first receiver to surpass 40 million, 5 million per year more than Jefferson. And then DK Metcalf getting 33 million, coming in at fourth on the list. So we're talking about, like, again, every year you're talking about multiple players. That's 4 players that in recent memory are raising the bar for wide receiver, right? Where only one quarterback got paid, Brock Purdy. 4 receivers are lifting the floor for the wide receiver position, continuing that kind of historic rise that they're on at the receiver position.
Yeah, and we did. I just, like, first episode back. My notes aren't completely complete yet, so don't,
Dude, I'm here for you. So the position that I think most people think is the second one is edge rusher, but they actually fall to third now, right? And it's not a huge kind of fall off from receiver. Receivers at 6.38, edge is now at 6.36. So it's very minor, 0.02% of the grade, right? So it's small. And edge is up from 5.9 last year to 6.36. So they actually went up 0.47%. The second highest for any position, the second highest single season raise in weight for any position. So that's pretty massive for them. And I think if you look at the edge position, I mean, Myles Garrett just got a huge payday, right? And he's the greatest edge that we've seen maybe in the last 5 years, since like maybe JJ Watt was at the top of his game. Myles Garrett also, just like Jamar Chase, reached that $40 million a year limit. So like, we're talking about 2 players that are now saying, it doesn't matter what position I play, I am the best non-quarterback in the NFL. I need to make $40 million a year. So that deal, again, it's why those 2 positions are so close. They're competing, saying, oh, it doesn't matter if you're a receiver or an edge. We impact the game very similarly. We deserve to be at the top of this list. I think there was probably some other guys too. Max Crosby, it looks like, Danielle Hunter. Both of those guys are making north of $35 million a year. Ray, like, do we see edge continuing to rise?
Oh, yeah. You have Micah Parsons coming up for a deal, probably going to get done right before the start of this season. But obviously, we're not going to wait till the like the Cowboys do, literally the day before the season starts or the week leading up to the season, like they did with Dak Prescott, to update our positional weights, because then obviously we would miss all of draft season. So that would be accounted for whenever the next season rolls around. But Micah Parsons is going to sign a massive deal and likely become the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL whenever that does happen. So with that in mind, edge rusher is not going anywhere. So again, the theme here, the NFL is still a passing league. Quarterback, wide receiver, pass rusher, the guys who get the quarterback and try to disrupt that whole damn operation, right? So the NFL is telling you what's important here and what makes the biggest difference. So follow the money.
Spot on. And I think Aiden Hutchinson is another guy that very soon could be getting a huge payday. Travon Walker, I don't think he's going to get that level, but he has increased his play year over year. So he's starting to get kind of some rumors that, hey, this guy might end up getting a pretty big deal as well. Whether or not that's with the Jags, I'm still not sure. Right after edge rusher, though, we talk.
And one thing, because someone might be screaming at the screen, the Bengals are cheap, so I didn't include Trey Hendrickson, but it's possible that he does eclipse that mark. But I'll believe it with the Bengals when I see it, because there's been a lot of back and forth there. And are they still fighting with Shamar Stewart? I don't even know. But
yes,
Trey Hendrickson is another possibility. So
yeah, they're just an absolute mess with their edge rushers, unfortunately. But you mentioned, right, it's quarterback, it's receiver, it's edge. It's the positions that affect pass. What about pass protectors, right? Tackle is next on this list at 4.95%. So after receiver and edge, there is another pretty big drop, almost an entire, it's more than a point. It's like 1.3, I don't know, 9%, something like that.
I'll try
pretty
to do
big. Yeah, not on the fly, right? Pretty big drop off, but tackle actually does go down a bit from last year. It was 5.01 last year. It's 4.95% this year. And again, that means that relative to the other positions, they did not continue to climb like the other positions did. But to me, that's not really a sign of a devaluing of the tackle position. It just means that maybe some of the other guys got paid a year prior, right? Tristan Wirfs, Andrew Thomas, Penny Sewell, those are guys that all had gotten paid in 2024. In addition, Christian Darrisaw. So all of those guys got paid. I think Dan Moore this offseason was the big guy that got paid. And, while it was a big payday for him, nobody's sitting here saying that Dan Moore is a top 5 tackle in the NFL, and he comes in at number 9 on the annual paycheck list. So Dan Moore was the big one this offseason. But I think next year, again, we might be seeing that change with guys like Akeem Ekwonu and Charles Cross that might be demanding big paydays. And then the year after, I know there were some guys from that 2023 draft as well that could argue that they are at a different level. And, Paris Johnson, for one, right, who might want a big deal a year early. That stuff happens too.
Yeah, well, we also have Rashawn Slater and Colton Miller that could be up for extensions this upcoming offseason as well. And those are guys, now you're talking, in my estimation, with Slater top 5 tackles and Colton Miller top 8, top 10-ish. So those are 2 big names that, again, could reset that market. So I think you highlighting, Dan Moore as sort of the crown jewel of this offseason at offensive tackle when it comes to extensions kind of tells you that it was more so just a down year in terms of the quality of prospect that came up for extension, as opposed to a trend of devaluing offensive tackle. That's always a premium position. That's of utmost important to keep those quarterbacks upright. So more of a slight dip by the dip. Is that a thing, right? As opposed to any sort of trend that we could take moving forward.
Yeah, and I think the same thing could be said for the next position, which is defensive interior. It was another year where that position has kind of gone up and down, and this year was a down year at a pretty decent percentage. It went from 5.44% to 4.91%. And again, that's like a 0.53% dip. That's pretty significant. But again, the reason being is not that they're not getting paid. It's just Chris Jones, Christian Wilkinson, Aleem McNeil, Derek Brown all got paid the year before. So we're just talking about maybe the guys that really are the best at the position still in the NFL already received their payday. Osa Odighizuwa on the Cowboys got a big payday this offseason, but it didn't crack that. I think he's at like 11th annual salary at $20 million per year, which is great for him, right? He's a player, again, I don't know if you could say that he's a top 10 defensive interior. He's probably, it's an argument. He might be 15, but here he's getting paid as a top 10 because there is such value for that position. Next year, again, I think it's probably going to be different. Jordan Davis could get a payday on the Eagles if he kind of steps up his game this year. There are a few guys from that draft class, but it's really it's Jalen Carter, right? I think that's the next big one that we're going to see, the next big domino that's going to fall. Jalen Carter is going to be a guy that I suspect is going to say, I want to be paid a year earlier. I'm not going to step on the field at some point. And, I think he kind of has them over a railing because they lost a lot of guys on that defensive line this offseason. So he's going to be able to demand a pretty big paycheck.
Yeah. And the thing is, the Eagles are proactive with these contracts. I mean, Howie Roseman does a great job of finding value and sort of taking advantage of the time value of money here. Pretty much the polar opposite of the Dallas Cowboys waiting until the very last minute and then conceding with every single negotiating point that is raised during the back and forth there. So I would anticipate Jalen Carter getting an extension over the next year. There's no need to drag it out any further from what I can tell. They would like to get him on the books because the price only goes up as you wait longer and longer to get these deals done. So I anticipate the Eagles locking him in, and he will still be he will likely be the top paid defensive interior player, barring something unforeseen here this coming season. So Jalen Carter, I think, is going to reset that market. And to me, I think the thing that really holds back, and this is, of course, the opinion based because the data is what the data is, but diving into why, to me, it's because there aren't as many good defensive interior players as there are edge rushers, right? I mean, there's just a ton of quality pass rushers in the NFL on the outside at edge. Yes, the top of the top really separate themselves, but defensive interior is not as deep of a position. So you're not going to have 3 or 4 guys every single year up for extensions that will sort of set the market moving forward year over year. There's just not enough of them. So you're going to have 1, maybe 2 per year. And Jalen Carter is going to result in an increase in value for the position. But it's hard to sort of trend that out year over year because after the top 6, there's a drop off. It's really hard to find elite guys at that position. So I think that's a reason why defensive interior is not going to increase as much as some of these other positions do, because yes, how good the top players are at the position matters, but so does the depth. You have to take that into account when sort of projecting this out. And the depth at defensive interior is just not the same as it is with pass rusher, as an example.
Perfect. Yeah, and I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. Cornerback is next on the list with another big jump for them. They actually jumped up one spot in this ranking. I think they're now position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're position 6 now in terms of overall value that we have here. They go from 4.12% to 4.55%, up 0.42% in total. Huge jump with big contracts from Derek Stingley Jr., J.C. Horn. I think there was a couple other guys as well, but now Derek Stingley Jr., the highest annual salary, $30 million a year for a corner. That is awesome. J.C. Horn is second on this list now. So both those guys, 1 and 2 on the list, are guys that got new deals this offseason. $30 million and $25 million. J.C. Horn's total value, though, over $100 million. So huge contracts. And you might be sitting there going, like, kind of like other positions. Okay, maybe it was just a good year for cornerbacks. Next year maybe that won't happen. False, right? Sauce Gardner has not been paid yet. Trent McDuffie has not been paid yet. Both guys from the Stingley class. And if you had to, if I was a betting man, I would bet that both of those guys get contracts north of what Derek Stingley got. And I think Sauce could be in a situation where he's having that same conversation like Myles Garrett had and like Jamar Chase had, where he said, not only am I the best cornerback in the NFL, which maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but I'm so good and I'm so impactful that it shouldn't matter what position I play. I should be pushing for that $40 million a year contract, $10 million more than what Stingley's getting. Will he actually achieve that? Maybe not, but I think maybe he ends up somewhere around that $35 million a year range, and McDuffie could be right there with him, where you're saying to yourself, okay, it went up 0.4% this year, but next year it might go up to an entire percentage, right? Like 1%, which would be massive in their rankings for the quarterback position. I would not be surprised if next year we're sitting here saying that cornerback has surpassed defensive interior for the 5th most valuable position in the NFL.
Yeah, and you also have names like Reek Woolen, Deron Bland, also on expiring deals that can command big money. So yeah, corner's not
Devin
going
Witherspoon.
anywhere. Yeah,
Devin Witherspoon, and
how could I forget Devin Witherspoon? Your boy.
And your boy on the Patriots, Christian Gonzalez. Like, both of those guys as well could be in a position like Derek Stingley was, where they're saying, I want to be paid a year early, right? And they could impact that even more. So I don't think the trend's going to stop.
Yeah, and if you're the Patriots, why not pay Gonzalez and get that extension on the books a year early while you still have that rookie contract for Drake May at quarterback? You have that window with that extra money to spend. That's the beauty and cheat code of a rookie quarterback contract. So by all means, lock up those premier players early, get those big numbers on the books while you can take advantage of the arbitrage you have with a low quarterback salary, relatively speaking. So yeah, that could be another name that gets thrown in the mix. So talking about depth, cornerback has lots of it. So that's one that I anticipate will continue to rise.
And for the next position, the one that cornerback surpassed, is a position that depth is what we talk about is really hard to find at the guard position. They go from 4.14% after an offseason where there was huge contracts being thrown around to this year 3.85. So a pretty massive jump down, just under 0.3%. And while I would sit here and say, I still think guard is a position to invest in, because I think the NFL is showing us that when they find the right guy, they're going to pay them big money. And Trey Smith was that guy this offseason who got only a 1-year deal, right? I think it was maybe a franchise tag or something like that. But he's the leader in annual salary right now with $23.4 million per year. I think it continues. I think it continues when a guy like Aaron Banks this offseason, the Packers are paying him now $19.25 million, good for 6th on this list. There's a chance he's not a top 30 guard in the NFL this year, right? Like, it's that significant how hard it is to find these guys and how much teams are willing to pay them. So it's something that I'm going to look forward to seeing this offseason for sure.
Yeah, that's the name of the game with guard. It's just depth. There's not enough good ones. You see it when you go to draft your teams in this league. If you don't get one of the top 8, 10-ish maybe, it's a soup. It's a soup of guys. None of them that really break the bank or reset the market when they are up for extension. So that's one where it's tough to see a continuous sort of increase in value there, even if they are important on the field. So yeah, My strategy is always get one of the few good ones, great ones, and let everyone else fight for the rest. The other thing is, if you want to really project, if you're like me and think we just had a really good top of guard class for the rookie class of 2025, well then, hey, look at
2 years in a
2028,
row.
maybe, 2 years in a row. So 2027, 2028, maybe you start to see a bit of a rebound. But for the short and medium term, this might be one that kind of flatlines and decreases a bit. As one goes up, another must go down. So it's not going to be roses for every position group that we go through. So just keep that in mind with guard. Might see a bit of a dip here over the next year or two before maybe a bit of a comeuppance for the position right after that.
Right. We're seeing the draft class that should be getting paid right now. That's the Zion Johnson class, the Kenyon Green class. Those guys have underperformed big time, right? That's why we didn't see major paydays. The year after, it's Peter Skoronski is really the only name to call out. And even he hasn't been as fantastic as he was billed as a prospect. So, we'll continue to watch it. Maybe Matthew Bergeron ends up getting a big payday for Atlanta. Joe Tittman he's a center, so maybe it's a little different, but those interior offensive linemen, kind of got to really look for them to find the right guys. Let's move to the next position here, which is safety. So safety actually has a little bit of a dip, but kind of stayed flat, right? So 3.75% the year before, 3.58% this year, down under 0.2%. So again, that's pretty static. And let's take a look, right? What guys? We know that last year there were some big paydays with guys like Xavier McKinney getting paid for the Packers. But this year, it was Kirby Joseph got a pretty big deal. So $21.5 million for Kirby Joseph. He is now the number one paid safety. That's kind of it. Trevon Moehrig got a decent deal, but he falls at number 6 on this list. It just wasn't a huge year for safeties. Javon Holland as well. He's all the way down, I think, at 8 now on the list, getting his payday with the Giants, only at $15 million. I think this is another position that the NFL is kind of looking at and going, it does have an impact when you find the right guy, but we're not willing to just sell out for it. Saying that, next year is the Kyle Hamilton year, right? And we talked about he's probably the number one safety in the NFL right now, and he's up for an extension. I don't think safety has the same argument that maybe like a Sauce has at corner to be pushing that $35 million a year kind of point, considering the next highest paid guy is only getting 21. But there's a chance that we're sitting here and going, okay, Kyle Hamilton's going to fall around maybe 28 to 30, right? Which would be a pretty big bump for the position, but it's still just one guy.
Yeah, it's one guy. Maybe Jalen Petrie as well can jump into that top 5 there. But to me, I see a player like Jalen Petrie, when he signs an extension and goes into that top 5, if anything, that's just going to kind of hold serve with the other positions that are also getting players extended into that top 5 range. So it's not going to increase the value of safety relative to others. They're really hanging their hat on Kyle Hamilton, which, you look around safety, talk about depth around the league. It's just not there. There's just no great safety depth in the NFL today. There's not a lot of great ones. One of them is coming up next year. You have a nice up and comer. I really like Jalen Petrie, but again, when I take into account the landscape of other positions as well, it's not one where I could see a sustained increase for safety moving forward here. So Kyle Hamilton's going to have to carry a lot of water for the position.
Yeah, and the next position we're going to talk about has been one that has kind of been in steady decline, unfortunately, and that's the linebacker position. Will we see an inverse effect now that maybe running backs in the run game is starting to make a resurrection? Maybe we see teams start to invest more in linebacker. But, we're talking about when we start, well, in 2022, not when we started this, but in 2022, linebacker was all the way at 4.25%, down to 4.02 the year after, down to 3.51 last year, and now down to 3.26. So we're talking about an entire 1% drop off for linebacker over the last 4 years, down almost 0.25% today. That's huge, right? That's absolutely gigantic. And when you look at the position, Fred Warner got an extension, so he gets a 3-year deal this offseason. Average salary just $21 million a year, though, right? We're talking about the best linebacker in the NFL right now, and he's not even making $25 million a year, right? And he's a pretty difference-making player. Zach Bond, right? He was the highest graded linebacker, I believe, according to PFF this past season. He also gets a 3-year deal to stay with the Eagles, $17 million a year. That's it, right? So we're talking about a position that the value is just really down. And I think one of the reasons behind that, right, is I'm talking about Zach Bond having his breakout season, but at 28 years old, right? So like, how do you give a 28-year-old linebacker, 5 years and $100 million? Like, you don't, right? You just don't do that. So I think that's part of the issue here. Is a linebacker is a position that takes a long time to really get your feet on the ground. And once you do, sorry, you missed the window. And that's a bit sad, right? Because linebackers, can play for a decent amount of time. There's a lot of old heads in the league that still do really well. Bobby Wagner being one of them, right? But those guys, you typically just give 1-year deals and, they stick around for a long time. You don't have to make that kind of an investment in them. We also look at the draft, right? The guys that should be getting paid this year for first round picks. We're talking about Quay Walker and Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd maybe gets a deal somewhere. I don't think it's going to be top of the market kind of a deal. Quay Walker, I definitely not, right? Like, absolutely 100% not. So we're going to have to wait a few years before the next kind of group of guys start to get their paydays. I think Leo Chanel might be kind of coming up. He might get a payday kind of soon. Will it be with the Chiefs? I don't know. Then we have to kind of wait. We have to wait for like Jack Campbell, Edge Cooper. It's like, it's tough.
Yeah, that's the problem right there. And the thing is, Roquan Smith signed his $20 million per year deal a while back, and that didn't set a new floor for the market. It just is what it is. It was top of market, and now it's just there. It's just there. Mm-hmm. It's hard to see other linebackers. I mean, in a year or two, other linebackers will exceed it, I'm sure, but not at the pace of other positions and how their value is increasing year over year and how much they're getting paid. So, yeah, linebackers are going by the way of running back in the early part of this decade here, just on the defensive side of the ball, and that teams are just choosing not to invest heavy money into them. Even the top of the top aren't getting that much compared to other positions. So, yeah, that's why I say that's a matchup dependent, start sit in all 22 week over week, unless you have one of the top 3 or 4 guys, because that's just kind of how the NFL treats him. It's just kind of, you're there, we'll use you, and we're not going to pay you big money though. And we'll just, sort of go on to the next. There's another bus coming when it comes. So yeah, not a rosy outlook for linebacker over the next couple of years here. It's just going to be more of the same.
Yeah. And the next position, I don't really know what to expect, and that's running back, right? So we talk about how the NFL had kind of a running back resurgence this year, where there were a ton of guys that had fantastic seasons, knock on wood. A lot of guys stayed healthy and produced, and there's a slight bump, right? So we went from 2.87% last year to 3.17% this year. That's great, right? That's a 0.31% increase. But it's really just due to one contract, which was the Saquon contract. And, the Eagles paid a 28-year-old running back, right? $20 million per year, only a 2-year deal. But still, that's like the record-setting running back deal is just $20.6 million a year. Then the other guys that got paid this offseason, Aaron Jones got a 2-year deal, $10 million a year, right? And he's 6th best at the position. Chuba Hubbard got $8 million a year a couple of years ago, right? Like, we're just not talking about massive contracts. Najee Harris got a 1-year deal with the Chargers, $5 million a year. It's just not a position teams are really investing in right now. And while there is this resurgence happening and there are a lot of young star running backs in the league, you kind of ask yourself, when there's drafts like the one we just had, where there might be 10 running backs that are impactful for teams at a pretty high level, why not just wait and draft one, right? And not pay these guys. So I think that's what teams are kind of focusing on right now. And it's kind of tough, right? It's tough to follow along because you like these guys. Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are probably the next 2 guys that are going to get big paydays. I'm trying to think if there's anybody from the 2022 class. I'm going to take a quick look. I don't think so. I don't think there was even a first-round running back that year. Breece Hall, I guess.
Yeah. The thing with the NFL
like
is
the Jets are out on him.
Yeah. The thing with the NFL is the NFL knows, or has sort of wisened up to the point of, if you're not a difference making running back, they're reluctant to pay you. So like James Cook, that you see the Bills are hesitant. They don't really want to give him a big deal. Breece Hall's kind of been iffy. Derrick Henry, I'm sure he'll sign a big money contract, but it'll be short term, and he's already in the top 5. So that's not really a market resetter. Maybe Kenneth Walker can have a good year and then sort of, create some value for himself and get into the top 5 there. But again, are they going to be paid much more than Saquon's current $20.6 million? The only ones who likely can are Gibbs and Bijan in the near future. So that's what you have to hang your hat on. So I think that's enough there, because they are uber talented players, 2 of those guys right there, that will kind of keep the running back value steady. And like you said, we did just have a really strong, young running back class here come up into the league here. So in another 3 years or so, you kind of have another sort of wave of that if all goes to plan. So I think running back is going to be steady. I think the story with running back is it bottomed out. It bottomed out. I mean, it was really bad for a few years where just nobody was getting paid. They were really being just used and abused on an assembly line. But the narrative, so to speak, kind of went too far in one direction, and the NFL was like, well, look, just because it says RB next to their name doesn't mean that some of them aren't on their own difference-making value add players. They're not all just totally dependent on their offensive line. So that's where you get a guy like a Saquon Barkley, to me, a guy like a Jahmyr Gibbs, a Bijan Robinson that are coming up here over the next couple of years. So the NFL has basically told us, if you're a difference maker at running back, a Derrick Henry, for example, we will pay you. But if you're James Cook and you had a great year on a great offense and scored a lot of touchdowns and things like that, but your stable metrics aren't fantastic, and it's fine. We can find another James Cook. You can't find another Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry very easily. So the NFL has really narrowed their focus on running back. And so you need a constant sort of supply of those high-end guys to make a difference. And that's not going to happen every single year, but I think we have enough of it to kind of hold steady and keep running backs above where they were when they bottomed out 2, 3, 4 years ago when we first really started tracking this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you look at it as well, it's kind of crazy because Saquon and Christian McCaffrey are making $5 million more than the next guy, which is 25% of the total salary, right? Like a huge increase above those guys. So yeah, if Bijan and Jamar get paid in the next couple of years and kind of push that upper limit, we're going to see that position rise a little bit more, because that $5 million difference between running back 2 and 3 will kind of shoot down and kind of start to fix itself. The next position is another one that I think is super interesting to follow, and that's tight end. So tight end actually goes down from 3.3% to 3.14 this year. So a slight decline, right? But again, pretty stable. We saw George Kittle get a payday and an extension. We saw Trey McBride get his payday and extension. So 2 guys at the top of this list are new contracts, but they're not even $20 million. They're both at around $19 million per year. That could change this offseason, right? I think Mark Andrews is up for an extension, and so is David Njoku. So those are 2 guys that I could say, I could sit here today and go, next year we might see those guys end up being at the top of this list. Then you look at the 2022 draft, and Trey McBride already got paid. But Jake Ferguson on the Cowboys, we know the Cowboys like to keep their own guys and pay their own guys, maybe a little heavy-handedly, right? So that could be a good contract for Jake Ferguson. And Isaiah Likely, I don't know, right? We don't know what to expect there. Are they going to keep Mark Andrews? Are they going to pay Isaiah Likely? They're going to have to make that decision about which one of those guys is the future of the tight end position. Or do they decide to bring both back? Like, who knows what will happen there? It's just interesting, right? And the tight end position, again, is one that has kind of been changing a lot over the last few years. And like, there are a lot of young names that are making impacts for teams. Like Cade Otton got a payday and an extension. It's not record breaking, but he did get, a decent contract. The year after that, I'm pulling up right now, right? Dalton Kincaid, Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave, like Tucker Kraft. There are guys from those last few draft classes that I think if I'm sitting here today, I don't think any of them are breaking the bank for their team. But who knows, right? The position, again, it's super rare to have a guy that makes a huge impact for you. So maybe these teams think that these players will become that for them. And maybe it does kind of reset the market at some point.
If Kyle Pitts puts up some nice stats, is everybody just going to forget the last 4 years and just be like, oh, yeah, Kyle Pitts, a unicorn athlete, and just pay him a big contract? That might happen. I wouldn't do it. But there's 32 teams in the NFL, so one of them might do something crazy. But yeah, outside of that, I think we saw in the last few years the sort of new age of tight ends kind of take hold. I really like the tight end, or the top of the tight end class anyway, this recent class. Obviously, you had Bowers a year ago as well. So there's young talent on the way, even if we don't get as big of a bump with this current up and coming free agent class that we might expect. More reinforcements are on the way, and it might sort of level things out a bit for tight end. It seems like we don't have to wait as long for a lot of these good ones to make an impact like we did maybe a handful of years ago. So that's something that trends positively as well when it comes to maybe someone signs an early extension after their third year. Like some teams just go, why wait? Lock them in now before it gets more expensive if you wait till the next year. So that's an option too. So there's potential there, but got to play their cards right.
Absolutely. The next position, and really like the last impactful position, is center. They are at the bottom of this list at 2.75%, actually up from 2.72 last year. So basically stable. But there were a couple decent contracts that hit, and the biggest one, Cam Jurgensen's contract, getting $17 million a year. That's a pretty big impact. Drew Dahlman as well this offseason with the Bears is getting $14 million a year, so he comes in at third. There were some decent contracts. Ryan Kelly, I think, ends up at 6 on this list, so just outside, getting $9 million a year for Minnesota. So we are seeing that teams are valuing the position, so they're paying guys, but it's just not comparative to the other positions. It's not that impactful, right? Creed Humphrey got $18 million a year ago per year, so he is the top of this market. I don't really see a situation where anybody's topping that money anytime soon, this offseason especially, because there's just not a contract coming up that I think is going to be that impactful. Connor McGovern maybe for the Bills, but I think he's going to be 28 years old by the time he signs that one. Are they really going to give him 3 years and big money? I think in the draft, right? It's like I said before, it's Joe Tittman for the Jets. Has he been good enough where you're really going to pay him that top of the market money? I don't know. I think he ends up making top 5, but will he be top 2? I'm just not sold on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe Linderbaum. He
that's a good one.
A bit, but that's it. You got 2 names there. You got McGovern and McGovern as a maybe, and then Linderbaum. I like Tittman. I'd pay him some good money. That's just me. He seems great. I'd pay Joe Tittman. But that's it, right? It's not a lot of depth there. And so again, as we've gone through this list, as a trend you've noticed, as the values get lower, there's not a lot of good players and that's harsh, but the depth is not the same as some of the positions at the top of the value list here. So that depth plays a part in that center. There's a small handful of great ones, a couple very good ones, maybe. And then it's the rest. And so if you don't have all those great ones sort of up for extension in the near term, you're going to find yourself at the bottom of this list. And that's what we see here, which again, all 22 fantasy purposes, good arbitrage opportunity there. You get one of those great centers, and that's a position you don't have to worry about for several years unless Frank Ragnow retires after just gutting it out through a whole bunch of crazy injuries as one of the toughest dudes in the league and then eventually hangs it up. You could set yourself up for many years if you get a great center, nab him early, and every week you have an advantage over your opponent at that spot. It can make a difference. Those little differences do add up. So something to keep in mind strategy-wise, because again, not a lot of great ones out there as we see here, and that's why they find themselves at the bottom of the list.
And we are down to the last 2 positions, and surprise, surprise, it's kicker and punter. We'll start with kicker. They are down from 1.18% to 1.06%. I actually think there's going to be 2 players that get paid this offseason that will probably raise the bar here. That is the Cowboys' Brandon Aubrey, who is on the last year of his contract and is only making $898,000. There's a chance we have a listener that makes more than that, right? It's possible.
Certainly not us.
Certainly not us. Harrison Butker right now is the leader in annual salary with $6.4 million. I think Aubrey would probably top that. He's been phenomenal, arguably the best kicker in the NFL.
$6.4 million for a kicker?
You guys are going to pay that. Be prepared.
No, damn.
And Jake Bates is
I
the
did
other
not
guy.
do any research on kickers and punters for this episode.
You
so
should have.
run with it. Run with it. Just go ahead. I was
Jake
just hoping
Bates.
you wouldn't say Brandon Aubrey. I have no idea what Brandon Aubrey was getting paid before this. I was just hoping that name wouldn't come up because that means it's another name for the Cowboys to have to pay, and apparently he is. So yeah,
It is. And you're going to pay him running back money. You're going to pay him more than Najee Harris is getting paid, which is wild, but also like kind of makes sense.
He makes more of an impact than Najee Harris on the game actually, because he can kick like 62-yard field goals before halftime. Like he actually does that stuff. So
that's what I'm saying. I think it makes sense.
That's why this game works. That's why this game works.
Yes, and Jake Bates is the other one who's making less than $1 million for Detroit. His contract is up this year, and he's been fairly good, right? So those two guys could impact this. I suspect that they'll both be over $6 million a year, which is kind of wild, right, to pay a kicker, but that's where we are today. And then punter, the last position, sadly, again, so 4 years ago they were getting 0.77%. Now, last year they're at 0.71. Excuse me, 2 years ago. Last year 0.68, and then this year 0.61. So they are almost going down to like half a point at this point. Not great for punters. Sorry all the punters out there, but the top of the market, Michael Dixon is making $4 million for Seattle. Do you really want to be paying a punter $4 million a year? Like, I kind of get kicker, right? The game's on the line. You need to make a good kick to win the game. That's huge impact. Punter, I don't know if I'm seeing that same kind of impact. And if there's guys on these lists that could be getting it, God bless them. Maybe Matt Ariza for the Chiefs. He was on a 1-year deal. He might get a payday. Will it be $4 million? Probably not. That's it.
Yeah, punters. And punters are there too. And some games are decided by like 0.1 points, and punters do make the difference. That's a thing. It happens in all 22. It's happened to actually a lot of us because the margins aren't as great as a standard fantasy football scoring game or platform. So it does make a difference. And yeah, I mean, there are 3 phases of the game, but that's enough about punters. That's all I got for you.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm curious what people think out there, how they think these trends are going to change over time. If you have ideas, drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear them. Also, if you think that our weighted kind of formula is awesome, tell us why you like it, or if you hate it, tell us why you hate it. We would love the feedback. We'd love to learn more, and also take in people's advice and just love to hear your thoughts, in all honesty. Ray, any last words for you? Again, it was super awesome having you back, dude. I think we missed this, and it'll be great to have this hopefully weekly again.
Yeah, no, it's good to be back. And I'm here to stay. So yeah, we'll be doing these weekly, at least weekly, maybe twice a week. I don't know. I'm signing you up for more work, Chris. I'm also signing myself up for more work. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but yeah, we're back here to stay. The season's going to be here before you know it. So sign up for all 22. Do the little barcode or QR code thing here on the screen to get the app. You see all the handles here. Chris, you do the outro better than me. I almost forgot what the outro is, so go for it.
QR code, apps. You said it, dude. You said it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Give us a follow on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and X at all22_PFF. Go to the App Store, download the app today to play all 22. It's as cheap as it's going to get. We have some really great deals for first-year sign-up, so I highly recommend that you go do that. And then give us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Like, subscribe, and give us a review. It really helps us get this out to more people. We appreciate all of you that tune in, and we love having you. Have a great day.
Let's go.